Well, hello, welcome again to a reading of the of Ephesians. I'm up to chapter 5, verse 22. And this is one of the more contentious sections in the New Testament about the obedience of wives to their husbands. So it begins, Hai gunaikes tois idiois andarasin hos to kurio, Hotiana estin kephaletes gunaikos hos ho Christos kephaletes ecclesias autos soter to somatos. Now the first verse here doesn't have a main verb in it, and presumably and in fact there's variant readings here, so people have added in a main verb. I think we have to supply an imperative based on this verb hupotasso back in verse 21, meaning to be subject. So it finished off at verse 21, being subject to one another in fear of Christ. And then I think we're meant to supply hupotasso, thosan, so let the wives be subject to their own husbands as to the Lord. Hoti ane, because a man is a head of the wife, as also Christ is head of the church. He himself is Saviour of the body. Again, I'll leave the commentators to discuss this in more detail as to who the autos is referring to here. Presumably the husband is the saviour or the protector of the body. Alla hos he ecclesia hupotassatai to Christo, hutos kai hai gunaikes tois andrasin en panti. But as the church, hupotassatai, passive again from hupotasso, is subject to the Christ, thus also, again there's no main verb here, we have to supply the women, understand, are subject to their husbands. You can use ane, which simply means man, but it can often be used both in biblical and in classical Greek in the sense of husband. En panti, in all thing, in each thing, literally. So in each matter. Hoi andres agapati tas kunaikas kathos kai ho Christos agapesen ten ecclesian kai hiauton paradoken huper autes. I'll just pause there. Husbands, literally men. Another imperative, agapate, love the wives, so your wives, just as also Christ loved the church. Kai paradoken, from paradidomi, he gave himself huper autes, on behalf of it, that's the church. Hina, let me move to the next page. Hina auten hagiase katharisas to lutro to hudatos in remati. I'll continue on here with this. Hina paristes autos hiato endoxon ten ecclesian me ecusan spilon e rutida e titon toi uton al hina ei hagia kai amomos. So we had a hina on the previous page, in order that he might make it holy, he might sanctify, autain it, that is the church, katharissas, having cleansed it, to lutro, with a cleansing of water, literally with the cleansing of water, in remati, well, perhaps in a word or by a word. Rema is generally means word. It can mean thing in the more commonly in the Septuagint. The root here is formed from, if you think of the aorist passive from lego, erathane, the rema is taken from that same root. It's from the aorist passive from lego, and it hence is another word for word. Often means the written word as opposed to the spoken word, but not always. hina parastase, in order that he might present, from para plus histemi, that he himself might present the church, endoxon, that's a two-termination adjective, hence on ending, even though it's going with ecclesia, in glory, present it glorious, so in glory, to himself. So just to do that bit again, so in order that he might sanctify it, having cleansed it with the cleansing of water by a word, in order that he himself might present the church glorious, or in glory, to himself. Me ekusan, feminine participle, not having a spilon a rutida. A spilon is a stain or a spot, and rutida is a word meaning a wrinkle. So not having any stain or spot or wrinkle, or anything of such things. So, or any such things, but the Greek says, or any of such things. Al hina a hagia kaiamomos, but in order that, now the a is the subjunctive from the verb to be, that the church might be hagia, holy, kai amomos, again two termination adjective, blameless. It's an alpha privative plus this mom root. There's various forms of this meaning blame, and this is without blame, but it's because it's a compound, it's two termination adjective, hence ends in os and not with a or a. Hutos of Velusin, and then in brackets kai, hoi andres agapan ta hiauton gunaikas hos ta hiauton somata. Thus the men of Velusin, they ought, agapan, this is from ophelo, that they are obliged, is the sense of it. Ophelo can mean a debt or an obligation, so they are obliged, so they ought, agapan, infinitive, from agapao, to love their own wives as their own bodies. Ho agapon ten hiautu gunaika hiauton agapa. Udes ga poti ten hiautu saka emise sen. Ala ektrefe kai thalpe ten kathos kai ho Christos ten ecclesian. Hoti mela esmin tu somatos autu. So the one loving participle here from agapao, the one loving his own wife, the wife of himself, loves himself. Leave it up a bit here so I don't forget. Udes garpoti, for no one ever, emise sen from missio, hated, it's an aorist here, hated his own flesh. But ektrefe, this is to thoroughly nourish. It's a compound from trepho, and the ek strengthens it. Trepho is to nourish or care for, look after. But nourishes it kai thalpe. Thalpo is to keep it warm, almost a coddle. So keeps it warm. And the outtan is agreeing with sarx. Sarx is a feminine noun, so it must be referring to that. But he nourishes his own flesh, and well, thalpe soothes it, keeps it warm, keeps it happy. Kathos kai, just as also Christ, understand, does this to the church. Hotimile esmen, because esmen, first person plural, we are members of his body. Now we get a quotation here in it's a quotation from Genesis 2:24. Anti-tuto catalepse. Anti-tuto idiomatic here for this, on account of this. It's like henika. So in return for this, literally. So for this reason, it's often translated, a man, catalepse, will leave, the father and the mother, kai pros kole thesetai. This is from pros, and kolao is the verb. This is a future passive. The kolao, I think it's probably cognate with the French, through the French, that word collage. It literally means to glue, to attach, to stick together. So often translated will cleave to his wife in the old translation. So for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and will be joined to his wife, and the two esontai will become. Now, eis is it's Semitism here. Eisakamion. We would just say one flesh. The Hebrew probably here will have a l, and always translated by eis, almost always by eis in the Septuagint. So it's the two will become one flesh. To mysterion tuto mega estin, ego de lego es Christon kai es ten ecclesiam. This is the great mystery, but I say, well, it's literally I speak of it in regard to Christ and in regard to the church. So I speak of this mystery in regard to Christ and the church. Plain kai humes ahoi kathena hekastos ten hiautu gunaika hutos agapato hos hiauton heidi gune hina phobetai ton andra. Now, plain used in the sense of just but here. It's like an Allah, but it's fairly strong. So plain, but also you. Now, it's the grammar's here slightly odd. We're going from plural to singular. The kath hena hekastos is each one by one. That is, each one individually. So, but also you, and the hoi is just picking up the humes here, I think. The ones, each one individually, so to paraphrase it a little bit, but let each one of you individually, thus let him love his own wife as himself. But the wife, and again, there's no main verb here, and we get this funny use of hina. So it's something like, let it be that the wife fears the husband. So it's the wife act in order. We have to understand something like act or do, behave, in order that she might show fear for her husband. And that's the end of chapter 5.